Hey everybody, this is OD Trey, and we're back with another Dauntless video. In today's Dauntless video, I want to talk about the defensive cell balance changes that are being proposed on the Dauntless Reddit by the devs. I just want to give my general feelings on these, as well as like my own ideas on like what it is that the game needs. So let's go ahead and just start taking a look at these. So in these defensive balance changes, we have sturdy. Before it was 120 seconds down to 15 seconds at +6 for preventing you from being staggered. So you can be prevented from being staggered every 120 seconds or every 15 seconds. Alright. After is prevent you from being staggered every 30 to 5 seconds, all the way down to 5 seconds. Now, I see some people being like, hey, that seems fantastic. I completely disagree, because if you are getting hit every 5 seconds and, you know, not being staggered, you're gonna die. Like, that is my main complaint about this. This encourages new players who don't know any better, to not dodge and just to try to fight through the damage. And not only that, but this requires them to be using 2 cell slots for defense just to gain this type of, it's not even mitigation, it's just gameplay interruption protection, or whatever you want to call it. Like, right? You maintain control of your character when you would get hit. And one of my biggest issues with this is that this is just going to get new players killed and hinder their performance overall. Because it's definitely, like, if you're taking +6 sturdy over +6 whatever offensive spell or cell that you want, you're just hindering yourself. Like, a tough, +6 tough is better than this. Okay? Like, +6 tough is going to help players more than this will. So I'm not a fan of it. I will go over my suggestions later on. They're down here in this post. But for now, I'm just going to go through theirs. Fortress. Go from 100 shield after not getting hit for 10 seconds to getting 200 shield after not getting hit for 6 seconds. Okay. But then, again, you've used 6 slots to gain a 200 shield. And it's every 6 seconds. Why not make it every 5 seconds and combo it with sturdy? Every 5 seconds, this thing is up and sturdy's up. And then, great. So now we've spent, 12 of our cell points towards this one mechanic of not being interrupted and taking 200 less damage. It's another one of those things that isn't helping people. If they're buying this, if they're putting this into their gear for any reason, they're directly reducing their effectiveness on the field. They're killing the behemoth slower, they're staggering it slower, and they're overall just not helping themselves. I'm going to repeat myself 400 times with this. Guardian. Provide 60% of shields applied to the nearest ally for 15 seconds, and then what is this? Applies 80% of the shields applied to you to the nearest ally for 30 seconds. This couldn't be more broken. This is already one of the most broken defensive cells in the game, but again, nobody wants to use it because nobody wants to sacrifice damage for it. But it's already an infinite amount of shield. Your Skarn weapon plus this is literally broken. You have, 4,000 shields, they have, 2,000 shields, whatever. And now it's going to be now it's a 30-second buff, not even a 15-second buff, it's a 30-second buff for 80% of the shields that you generate. And if 2 people have this, then all shields are now at 180% effectiveness. Like, it's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. Yeah, shields need a rework, because infinite shields are as bad as Iceborne. And the only reason there's not a complaint for it is because Skarn weapons aren't exactly meta. Um, yeah. Strategist. You used to reduce your max health by 300, and then after dodging through an attack, grant 150 shield to all slayers. Now it's after dodging through an attack, grant 175 shield to all slayers. This is honestly one of my favorite ones that they have. Not only is it asking people to dodge through an attack, to buff all their allies, and it's just kind of something that's there. You know, it's just a solid sell. It's not overly broken. My biggest issue with it is that it's not going far enough in granting a bonus. This really needs to grant something else, and I'll get to that later. Let's see. We're gonna go down to engineer. Engineer is, before it was your flasks heal you for less, but your pylons have 150% increased pylon range. Now it's just your pylons have 150% increased pylon range. I like negative effect things, like I'm totally fine with them, but I definitely think that where they originally placed them wasn't ideal. What you were giving up wasn't enough for what you were getting. So I'm totally fine with this pylon change. Again, I would just take it a little bit further. As you are spending 2 cell slots for this, it should be valuable. It should be good. And finally, Mender is your flasks heal you for less, and when you use a flask, you heal all other slayers, and they just removed your flasks healing you for less, and now you just heal all other slayers. So again, it's just you drink a flask, all slayers heal. Yeah, again, you're wasting cell slots for this effect, but we'll get into that. I'm gonna scroll down to my feedback on this. As I was pretty, I think I was pretty clear on what it is that I would want from this type of stuff. So, sturdy. I said if you're getting hit every 5 seconds, you have other problems like death. This does not help teach players how to play correctly, nor does it provide them with an incentive to learn. Suggestion. Prevent you from being staggered every 10 seconds. It goes from 35 down to 10. It's not that 120 something stuff. 35 down to 10, and for 1 second after being staggered, gain, for 1 second after being unstaggerable, gain 20% damage reduction. So to be clear on what that wording means, is it means while you are unstaggerable, and for 1 second after, you have 20% damage reduction. Okay? So what does this do? Well, one, we increase the timer back up to 10 seconds, so that you're telling people, dodge something, right? But when you fail your dodge, it's a little bit less painful, right? You're taking 20% less damage, and for once every 10 seconds, you're going to take 20% less damage, but it's at least applies some form of teaching mechanic and survivability to that whole thing. The place that I think that this sturdy cell would have the most benefit in is something like a hammer build, but I still don't think that this is good enough. By the way, this cell is not worth using, even at the way that I put it into the game. But still, we'll get to that at a different point. But I explained that this not only helps keep them alive when they do get hit, but also encourage them to play safe until it is back up. Also, the damage reduction while unstaggerable grants a bonus while outside of the cells for like Sword Cyclone and Axe Perfect Charge. So the Axe Perfect Charge is going to grant you the unstaggerable, and so will Cyclone, and so both of those will also have that damage reduction. So Cyclone, while you're cycloning, you can just have 20% damage reduction the whole time. That's something, especially if you're not using Iceborne. Like, you need something to mitigate damage, right? So yeah. Let's look at Fortress. Like I said, I still don't think Sturdy is good enough in that thing. The game just needs a lot of changes, but I'm not going to dive too deep. So Fortress. Before, it used to grant you the 100 health, now it grants you the 200 health in 6 seconds. I said, again, this isn't rewarding players or teaching players to play correctly. Suggestion, so it grants 200 shield after not being hit for 15 seconds. While shielded, all slayers gain 10% damage. Alright, so this is telling players that, well, Once the shield is up, I want to keep the shield up. But when I get hit, I'm protected. I reduce that damage by 200, but then I need to go 15 seconds without getting hit again, so that Slayers get buffed again. So 10% damage to all Slayers is not bonkers. It's that's 40% damage while the shield is active, but it's requiring you to play perfectly. So it's like a Predator, but spread out. The damage is spread out between all the Slayers, and you had to give up, your cell slot for it. This makes sense to me. This is probably one of my favorite ones that we made here, because yeah, it's actually has good function and encourages team play. All right, Guardian. Is just I talk about how it's a truly broken cell when combined with Scar and weapons, and these shields have no cap, and they really hurt the design space of shields. It really does. Yeah, nobody cares about having infinite shield right now because they have infinite health. But if infinite health wasn't a thing, they'd go to the next thing, which is infinite shields, and then we're literally still in this exact same hole that we're in right now. All right, my suggestion was just to keep the shield at the 60% at max, and then for each Slayer you gain 5% increased damage, max stacks, or max 4 stacks. Pretty much what this is saying is whenever you shield a Slayer, you increase your damage by 5%, and so once you've shielded 4 Slayers, you've increased your damage by 20%. Again, I still think that this is a absolutely bonkers cell, but it's if it's meant to be a functional cell that someone would use, it needs to grant damage. It needs to grant something, and then this is kind of how I would do it. But shields really need to be looked at overall with the infinite stacking issue. Strategist. I said one of the more balanced cells. I like it that it's rewarding people for playing correctly. Suggestion: dodging through an attack grants the shield to all Slayers and grants them 10% attack speed for 10 seconds. Grants all Slayers 10% increased attack speed for 10 seconds. So now, again, somebody dodges through an attack. They're not just buffing themselves. They're shielding everybody and giving them a good damage window to be aggressive in. And if they get punished for being aggressive, that punishment is reduced because we have this nice 175 shield to help, buffer it. Like, this is what I'm talking about in encouraging, good gameplay and rewarding it, and then everyone feels rewarded for that action. Engineer, this is not a defense cell, but I still provided feedback on it. I think that the pylon range is fine, and then 50% chance to not consume a pylon. Look, I've asked you to work with your team and have that potential to spend resources to buff your team up, either giving them increased health regeneration or giving them increased damage, whatever it is that you wanted to do, but there's a 50% chance to not consume that pylon, so you feel good about it. And you're happy to do it because you're not always consuming your pylons. There's another way that I would go about doing this, and I would make this a 100% chance to not consume a pylon when used, and you can only have one pylon equipped. That's the other way I would go about doing this, is you've spent 2 cells, you get this to be that buffer, and you can buff. That's it. That's the end of the story. You get to buff, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. That's good. That's totally like what I want to promote. Okay, Mender is that your flasks heal allies. I said suggestion: gain 1 flask every 60 seconds while in combat. Well, if you're going to be drinking your flasks to heal the other Slayers, you better have a way to have more than 5 flasks, because otherwise, this is again, why am I using this over anything else? It just, yeah. This really needs to do something else, like recovering a flask. And a flask isn't even a consumable thing. And if you're healing people with your flasks, man, do I wish that there was some awesome, powerful, cell that when you heal an ally, you gain some big bonuses. And then that would really, trigger this to where you're drinking flasks, healing allies, and as long as an ally is healed by that flask, you get a bonus. Anyways, I'll just go on to finish reading what I said. I still think that even with these changes, many of these cells are not good enough with the current design. I could write a huge post about how technique and power cells are the only types that matter because they increase DPS in some ways, or in some way. Defense cells and mobility cells need a rework to grant DPS boosts based on their gameplay style. So specifically, I think that it's okay for defensive cells to be defensive, and then other defensive cells to capitalize on that defensiveness and grant a bonus for it. All right? So Tenacious or Tenacity, whatever it's called, is a good example of have full health and have a ton of shield, and you'll get a bunch of crit. Do you know how if we put a shield cap on shields, and the way I would fix Tenacious or Tenacity or whatever is to say you gain 1% crit every 2 seconds while shielded. Or if you want to change that a little bit, you gain 5% crit every 10 seconds you're shielded, or something like that, right? So as long as you have a shield, you'll build up that crit, and it doesn't require you to super stack a shield. It's just asking you to maintain a shield. And then if a shield's had a cap at like 100% of your max health or 50% of your max health or something, to where shields were more abundant but had a limited amount of it, so that you're not walking around with 1100 health and 4700 shield. I mean, yeah, you get what I'm saying. So anyways, here are some examples of defensive cells that I would suggest be put into the game. Okay, increases max health by 500. Losing 500 health causes you to explode, dealing damage in a large area based on your max HP. So the higher your max HP, the bigger tankiness you are, the more damage this explosion does. Okay, but it requires you to lose health. Now again, I've said that I don't want to encourage players to play badly, right? A player getting hit sometimes and exploding, dealing damage isn't a problem, but I want to have a way to activate that. So the next cell is a defensive cell that says Lantern Hold sacrifices 50% of your current health and grants a shield equal to the sacrificed health. Gain 5% lifesteal while the shield holds. Lasts 10 seconds. Okay, this defensive thing works with the first cell. You could lose, if you've got the 1500 health, because that cell grants 500 itself, you're at 50% health, you sacrifice half your health, you can be exploding, dealing this damage, while also granting yourself a shield and the lifesteal to recover it. So your Lantern Hold gains an additional trigger explosion effect of damage. So we're giving defensive cells a way to deal damage, and it has to do with, it cares about what is happening with your health. Either you're losing it or whatever. So yeah, that's your Lantern Hold is also a lifesteal effect. But at the same time, you had to sacrifice half of your health in order to gain that lifesteal. And it's only for 10 seconds. So it's not an infinite, it's still pretty infinite, but you get the point. The last one I did is maximum shield set to 500. Reaching 500 shields causes the shield to explode, dealing damage and consuming the shield. So let's say you are a build that wants to support your teams with shields, but you still want to deal damage. Well, you have all these shields that you're producing through like Skarn, Weapons, and Guardian, but now you're capped out at 500, and then whenever you hit 500 shield, it explodes and you deal damage in the area, and yeah, it just consumes the shield. So you're converting those shields into an offensive ability while it still is a defensive stat. If you get hit before you're at 500 shields, then that damage is going to be mitigated, and you have to wait until you hit the max 500 shields again. And lastly, the one that I said is dodging increases damage by 4% for 6 seconds, stacks 5 times. So that's what a mobility cell would look like. Is that look, if you're spending a lot of time dodging around and moving, and you want to encourage the player to do those actions, then this is a cell that would do that. You have a high uptime on your dodge mechanic, and you're just encouraged to keep that dodge up to gain 20% increased damage. Do I think 20% increased damage when having to dodge every 6 seconds is enough? Not really, but you know, it's better to play the number low while I'm suggesting it so that people don't just call it OP right off the bat. But I guess that you could change that up to 6% and have it be something like a predator cell that requires you to constantly be dodging in order to maintain it. And yeah. Is that a perfect cell? No, I think the duration's a little too short. But you get the idea, right? So anyways, this is kind of the rant I just wanted to give. I have a lot more I could say about these systems and how they should really be encouraging players to take actions that are beneficial, like interrupting behemoths, breaking parts, wounding parts, dodging through attacks. All of these things should be encouraged and rewarded through cells. And right now, the most beneficial cells in the game are get hit, go down to 50% health, and go God mode. Because you've got 25% increased attack speed, 25% increased damage, a 30% reduction, 8% lifesteal, or 30% damage reduction, 8% lifesteal. Like, the whole point is to just make yourself low health and have no risk, right? If there was a risk to being low health, I wouldn't care, but there's currently no risk. And it's just such an effective play style. And it's not rewarding the player for doing anything intelligent. It was just rewarding the players if they don't have discipline. It rewards the players who got hit with bonus damage and bonus attack speed. And if they do have discipline, then it's just putting that giant pillow there to protect them. Anyways, that's this went on longer than I wanted, but if you guys have any feedback, feel free to hit up this thread, respond, and say what it is that you think would make defensive cells worth it, because right now I'm not 100% sure. Well, I'm pretty darn sure that this isn't going to bring any of those defensive cells into the game in any meaningful way, other than just make them slightly less useless, and while still also being useless. Alright, you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching. If you like my content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys later. Have a great day.